Amenhotep was more wealthy and powerful than any previous pharaoh, and soon everyone would know it. He would channel the vast resources of the empire into the largest building program the world had ever seen.
To embark on a building program was one of the best ways for an Egyptian king to present himself as a hero, as an achiever, as a doer.
It was work on an epic scale. The countless sandstone blocks hewn from the Egyptian quarries have left caverns that are themselves like temples carved out of the rock. It was a triumph of organization. Soldiers, cooks, doctors, and water bearers were all sent into the desert to support the quarrymen. Amenhotep's magnificent new temples did more than advertise his wealth. They also honored the ultimate source of Egypt's glory, her many gods. Amenhotep thanked one god in particular for his success, Amun-Re, the king of the gods. To guarantee the support of Amun-Re, the pharaoh donated great portions of his wealth to the god's main temple. And as the temple grew richer, the temple priests grew more powerful.
The priests who control these vast establishments have power. They have financial power, they have political power as well.
The power of the priests of Amun-Re was beginning to rival Pharaoh himself. But out in the empire, Amenhotep made sure his subjects heard only of his triumphs, not his problems. And Amenhotep had a surprising new way of communicating directly with his subjects. Stones, carved into the shape of dung beetles, had long been used in Egypt as amulets. Now Amenhotep had these mass-produced, portable scarabs, inscribed with news of his latest achievements. Carried across the empire, these propaganda beetles were the first newspapers in history.
He wants to proclaim his power, his richness, his achievements to the broadest possible strata of the Egyptian population, and this news scarab was a way to replace a kind of earlier form of TV, if you will, of sending information all over the place.
It was by news scarab that the outside world first heard Amenhotep had chosen his queen. In addition to the minor wives in his harem, every pharaoh selected a chief queen. To strengthen the royal line, she was often a sister or close female relative. Amenhotep chose to ignore this royal custom. He proudly announced that he was marrying a commoner, the daughter of a chariot officer, a woman called Tiye.
The chief queen, Tiye. Her father's name is Yuya, and her mother's name is Tiye. She is the wife of a mighty king.
We get a sense of a very strong woman. The portraits are extraordinary, and they do for once convey something of the person, because there is no blandness to Queen Tiye. You look at her and you think, ooh, she really was something else, this one.
Queen Tiye was not an easy queen. She was so strong, and you can see that from the statues of this queen, how she was equal to the king in size.
Queen Tiye was more than just a chief queen. She was Amenhotep's near equal. Far down the Nile in Nubia, Amenhotep made this stunningly clear by building a pair of temples, one for Queen Tiye and one nearby for himself, here at Soleb. These temples were not just built for the royal couple, they were actually dedicated to them. Deep in the southern part of his empire, Amenhotep and Tiye were worshipped as gods.
The shadow of Pharaoh extends in stone along the Nile to the African provinces of his empire. He is there in a physical presence looking out over the empire that he controls.
Amenhotep's message to his Nubian subjects was clear. At the base of the columns at Soleb are images of captive Nubians, a graphic representation of Pharaoh's power for all to see. Here in Nubia, it was especially important that Amenhotep was in control. Nubia's mines supplied most of Egypt's gold, and gold was what allowed Amenhotep to control his rivals.
The requests from the foreign kings is for gold, gold, and more gold, because, as says one of these kings, in your land gold is as plentiful as dust. It's the Fort Knox of the ancient world.
Amenhotep had secured the gold supply. But more and more of this gold was pouring into the temple of Amun-Re. Amenhotep's priests in Thebes now controlled a third of Egypt's wealth. They also interpreted Amun-Re's will, which Pharaoh had to obey.
At this stage, the priests of Amun-Re were probably more powerful than they had ever been in the history of Egypt. The high priest of Amun at Karnak would probably in fact have a power superior to that of the king.
To shift the power away from Amun-Re's priests, Amenhotep began to show interest in another minor god, the Aten, the visible sun. It could hardly have seemed important, yet it was about to change everything. In 1352 BC, Amenhotep III, the great king, the diplomatic genius, died. Egypt was plunged into mourning.
The death of the king must have been a terrible event. This is a man who had dominated politics, religion, the life of not only his subjects, but the life of the empire for such a long time.
Even in the Near East, Amenhotep was mourned by his rivals. Foreign kings wrote to his widow, Queen Tiye, expressing their personal grief.
I cried, I sat, I did not eat or drink. I mourned, saying, if only I were dead, or 10,000 were dead in my land, and that my brother whom I love and who loves me were alive as long as heaven and earth.
Amenhotep III died in the course of his 39th year. Probably in his last days he could look out over the empire that seemingly the sun would never set over. He could think of a world at peace, where diplomacy ruled, where the wealth of Egypt was undoubted, and he could leave it all to his son, Amenhotep IV.
Amenhotep IV had grown up in the most powerful family on earth. Now he found himself pharaoh and ruler of Egypt's empire. In the first years of Amenhotep IV's reign, it must have seemed like nothing had changed. But at his court, the new pharaoh was encouraging ideas that would soon transform Egyptian society.